Last time we didn't use a whiteboard, and I felt that perhaps there was maybe a little bit too many lists that we gave you all to know without having written them down. So first, can someone tell me the difference between major and minor impurity? Yes.
Is it that minor impurity requires wudu, major impurity requires ghusl?
Excellent. So one major difference you could say is that minor impurity requires wudu, and major impurity requires ghusl. Okay. Zain, great. What can someone tell me what necessitates or what makes a valid ghusl? What makes a valid ghusl? What are the integrals of a ghusl? And this could be brothers or sisters answering. Yes.
Intention and having water wash your whole body.
Yep. Excellent. Okay. What nullifies wudu? What are some of the nullifiers of wudu? What are some nullifiers of wudu? Yes.
Anything that passes through the front or the back, touching of one's private parts, or anybody's or even a child's.
And we mentioned something specific about touching one's private parts. We mentioned a way.
Has to be at the bottom of their hand and the bottom of their fingers as well.
The inside, you could say.
Insides.
So the way that they usually explain it is that it has to be touching one's private parts with what comes together when you put your hands together like this. Like the part of your hand that comes together when you do this, or this for your thumb, touching your private parts with this part of your hand, that is what will break your wudu. Okay, and then one more.
Touching like non-mahrams.
Touching non-mahrams
through like skin to skin, but with the exception of what they said, hair, tooth, and then also there's one other one as well, fingernail as well.
Fingernails, yeah. Sorry, and then one more. Actually, that was three. One more.
Just the second one, which I'm forgetting.
You said anything passing from the front and back, touching one's private part, touching the opposite gender.
And then losing like one losing their consciousness.
Yes, losing consciousness. Yeah, and then we mentioned, so somebody other than Ismail now, we mentioned that there's one way that a person can sleep that their wudu is not broken. What is that way? Yes.
Sitting up.
Right.
Sitting up.
Yes, exactly. If somebody sleeps sitting up, then their wudu will not be broken. Okay, and also we mentioned that there's a difference between sleepiness and drowsiness. This might be. I didn't mention this as something you guys have to memorize, but if somebody knows it, that'd be great. The difference between sleepiness and drowsiness.
You're kind of still aware of what's going on around you. You can't really respond.
Great. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, drowsiness is that you're aware of what's going on around you. You can hear, but you can't really respond. And sleepiness is not that. And from the signs of sleepiness is a dream, right? Or excuse me, the signs of like being actually asleep is a dream. And just because you don't see a dream doesn't mean you're not asleep. But if you do see one, then you know that you are. Okay, and then what? This is a good one. What necessitates ghusl? Like what makes it so that you enter into a state of major ritual impurity such that you have to do a ghusl? We mentioned 6 things. 6 things. Yes.
Okay, so there's sexual intercourse,
Mm-hmm.
and mating like sexual fluids,
Mm-hmm.
death, menstruation,
Mm-hmm.
giving birth,
Mm-hmm.
and postnatal bleeding.
Right. Excellent. Those are all 6. Okay, great. Well, mashallah. Mashallah, tabarakallah. Okay, so now today we're going to talk about the preconditions of prayer. And the reason why the author, he talked about wudu first and tahara first, purification first, is because from the preconditions of prayer is purification. From the preconditions of prayer is purification. So though now we're talking about the preconditions of prayer, you could say we've already started talking about them. Because a person, in order for them to pray, they must be in a state of tahara they must be free from major and minor ritual impurity. And one thing we want from all the students, we want all the students to take notes, right? The Imam Shafi'i, he says that knowledge is like an animal that you're hunting. So capture and or an animal that you've hunted, right? So he says preserve or keep hold on the animal that you've hunted or on the game that you've hunted with a strong rope, right? He says like how essentially saying that it doesn't make sense for somebody to go through all the trouble of hunting an animal or fishing an animal, and then when it comes to actually storing that animal, once they have it in their possession, they just let it go and leave and run. Right? Our teachers would say write the best of what you hear and memorize the best of what you write. Write the best of what you hear and memorize the best of what you write. So writing is extremely, extremely important for a person to understand the lesson. And we also want people to be reading the lesson before they come to class. Someone before coming to class, they should know, okay, today we're going to talk about this. We're going to review this. They should already have an idea before even the teacher begins explaining. It's something that we would do before. We would read the lesson number of times, at least 5 times, like the actual text itself. And then we would go find a commentary and read the commentary, such that by the time we get to class, we're ready not just to be taught by the teacher, we're ready for the things we don't understand before the teacher even explains it. And then when the teacher explains it, okay, now the teacher is just affirming what I've studied and making it solid in my memory. So it's a tried and tested way of studying properly and studying well. And then after class, you review what you studied before. So in between every 2 classes, you have a time of review and a time of preparation, such that a person at the end of a course of study, they don't feel like, okay, I just attend all these classes, but I don't have anything really like solid. Rather, they feel that they have a holistic understanding of what they took. So we want people to take notes. Bi'idhnillah ta'ala. Okay, so the author, he says, actually, let's have a reader. Robert, would you like to read? Sure. Thank you. If you could pass him the mic. Thank you. Okay, you'll be reading from page 18, where he says the validity of salah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. The validity of salah is dependent on the following. 1. Awareness of the entrance of the time, either with certainty, yaqeen, or because of working it out.
Ijtihad. You don't have to read what's in the brackets.
Okay. Or an overwhelmingly strong supposition, because if you make salah with doubt, it is not a valid prayer. 2. Awareness of the qibla. 3. Covering the aura with a permitted clean cloth. And 4. Removal of impurity from the cloth, body, and place of prayer. And if it is also necessary to pray
it is also necessary
to pray the obligatory salah standing up if one is able to do so.
Okay, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. The author, Habib Ahmed bin Zayn al-Habashi, may Allah have mercy on him and benefit us from him and from all of you, and be pleased with him and all of you and us. Ameen. He mentions the validity of salah is dependent on the following. So these are conditions for the prayer that must exist before entering and must be sustained throughout the prayer. Okay, so before you enter the prayer, these must be present and they must be sustained throughout the prayer for this prayer to be valid, right, until the end of the prayer. And he starts by saying, ma'rifatu dukhul al-waqti biyaqeen. The first condition is to know that the time is entered with certainty. Okay. Actually, in your book, it should be numbered. It's numbered in your book. We're gonna add 2 more by the end, inshallah. We're gonna add 2 more by the end, but your book has it already numbered for you. So number 1, he says, knowing that the time has entered with certainty. So every one of the prayers that we have we have times and our time range that the Prophet ﷺ taught us. And the Prophet ﷺ was taught these time ranges by Jibreel alayhi salam. After the night journey, where the Prophet ﷺ was given the obligatory 5 prayers for us to pray, the day after, Jibreel alayhi salam came to him and taught him the times of the prayer. And the first prayer that he taught him was Dhuhr prayer. The first prayer that he taught him was Dhuhr prayer, because the night journey was at night. The Prophet came back in the morning, and then the immediate next prayer after he came back was Dhuhr. So Jibreel alayhi salam comes at Dhuhr prayer and teaches the Prophet ﷺ when to pray Dhuhr. Okay, and then he comes back at Asr prayer, teaches him when to pray Asr. Comes back at Maghrib, at Isha, at Fajr. And so from that we get, Jazakallah khair, we get all of our prayer times. We get all of our prayer times. I'm not going to go into in this class, or we're not going to discuss in this class, like the details behind that, like the shade of something being a certain length, or like seeing this twilight in the horizon, that means, you know, that the time is in. However, we will talk a little bit about just knowing that the time has come in, and a person should not pray before the time. Praying a prayer before its time comes in is not valid. It is not valid. Okay. And what is a good way to know? There's a couple of ways a person can know if a prayer came in. Number one is that you see the sign yourself. So for example, you're sitting on the beach and you see the sunset over the horizon, right? The disk of the sun is now no longer visible on the horizon. Okay, it's time for Maghrib. Easy, right? Other prayers are probably a little bit harder to they're a little bit more subtle, and their signs can sometimes be harder to see in a place where there's so much light pollution, right? Like the difference between the red glow and the white and the yellow in the horizon, like the different twilights at nighttime, it's actually very hard to make out when you're in a city, right? And alhamdulillah, we have these these prayer timetables that have been worked out that take those specific times and use like the science of astronomy to understand exactly when those times would take place, when exactly would the red glow disappear, when exactly would the true dawn appear in the horizon, etc. Now, one thing to mention about this is a level of finding the time of the prayer that is weaker than you seeing itself, right? You're relying on something that's tried and tested. So like an example that they'll give us something tried and tested is like a rooster that you know always calls out at a certain exact time, right? Or like a tailor, he knows that, okay, I tailor 5 shirts every single day from Maghrib to Isha, and every time I finish 5 shirts, Isha comes in. So let's say one day Isha comes in, he doesn't hear the adhan. Well, I know I've tailored 5 shirts. I know Isha has come in, right? For example. In our context, we're going to be relying on these apps. However, what do they have as a condition for something that you rely upon to be valid is that it's tried and tested. Now, one thing about these apps that it has been tried and tested is that sometimes they're off by a few minutes. Okay, sometimes they're off by a few minutes. So what does that mean? Like, what should a person do? A person should add a couple of minutes at each prayer time for these apps. Like, for example, particularly with Maghrib time, particularly when you're fasting. Because we have seen like multiple times, tried and tested, that the time in the app, usually the time in the app, the sun will still be a little bit over the horizon. And part of that is because there's a difference between, and this is maybe just a little scientific, there's a difference between astronomical sunset versus visual sunset. Okay, like on an astronomical level, has the sun gone below the horizon of the earth? Okay, that is the time that you can calculate down to the second. However, visual sunrise, like what somebody would actually see if they were standing at a spot and looking on the coast or on the horizon, like an empty horizon, that you cannot calculate accurately because it depends on a number of factors, right? Visually, we might still see the sun on the horizon, and astronomically, the sun has already set. The bending of the light that happens depends on a number of factors, such as atmospheric pressure, such as temperature, such as wind, weather, all of these different various factors. It depends on that. So and we actually like the faqir, your needy brother, we actually reached out to the National Weather Service and we emailed them and he said, like, hey, like, you know, why am I seeing a different sunset than what is like calculated on your guys' website or on prayer times? And they said, because it's hard to accurately calculate anywhere in the world when visually the full disk of the sun will go below the horizon because of these various factors, right? They said it's hard to 100% know that. And we went backpacking on the west side of Michigan, and we went to the coast on Lake Michigan, and we were sitting there watching. We had the app out, we had the timeout, and I'm staring at the sun, not still above the horizon, though the app said that it was Maghrib time. And a few weeks ago, I was driving on 96 right over here, right? So I was going east on 96, just as Maghrib was coming in. So Maghrib is in my rear view mirror, right? Or like the sun is in my rear view mirror. I see my phone in front of me. I have the GPS. My phone says Maghrib time has come in. I look at my rear view mirror. I see the sun right behind me, right? So, and it's like maybe halfway down. And I really wasn't that high up, such that the elevation I was on would make that big of a difference. So I say all of that to say, like, if you come to the Dad and, you know, we say, okay, we make adhan 6 minutes after the app and we break our fast 6 minutes after, etc. This is not tashaddud. This is not like being overly strict for no reason. Rather, this is what the Sharia tells us to do, that you break your fast when you are certain that the time has come in. And so we are certain that these apps have at least 1 to 2 minutes and at max 5 minutes of discrepancy between the actual sunset and between when what the app says. So caution is necessitated here, particularly when it comes to fasting. And we'll talk about that more when we get to actual fasting. More often than not, you can generally trust these apps, but just add a couple of minutes. Add a couple of minutes. If you're fasting a fast, add even more minutes, so that you can make sure your works are valid. Bi-idhnillah ta'ala. So this is number one, the first condition, which is being sure that the time has entered. Okay. Number two is facing the Qibla. Facing the Qibla. And what is the Qibla? It is the Kaaba. The actual Kaaba itself, Ainul Kaaba, the Kaaba itself is the Qibla. Okay. So a person must face the Qibla with their chest. Okay, not with their face, though of course a person should, and it's makruh. It's disliked to turn your face in prayer. But what is taken into consideration is facing it with the chest. Okay, so a big mistake sometimes people make is they'll be in tashahhud and they'll do this. They'll do Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Okay, like by you doing this, turning your chest before you finished Assalamu alaikum, that first Assalamu alaikum, when that meme at the end of it leaves your mouth, okay, now your prayer is done. But some people who will do this, they'll say Assalamu alaikum. So they're turning their chest before they've completed that statement, meaning that they've broken their prayer before they actually ended it properly. That prayer is not valid. That prayer is not valid, right? So a person should not turn their chest this way or that way. And this is even if somebody else turned your chest. Like even if somebody else grabbed you and did like this, right? Or pushed you and you turned away from the Qibla, then your prayer would be broken. Okay, there's some things that will break your prayer that if it happened by accident, it's forgiven. There are some things that'll break your prayer that even if it was on accident, it is not forgiven. We'll get into that later about what nullifies the prayer. Now, how do you know the Qibla? Number one is you see the Kaaba, right? May Allah allow us to all see it. Ameen. Right? And seeing the Kaaba is worship, the Prophet said. Right? That every time you look at the Kaaba, you're forgiven of your sins, your elevated ranks. It's worship just to even look at the Kaaba. Right? Number two is you're informed by someone or something that has knowledge of the direction of the Kaaba. Okay, so like somebody tells you that, okay, I know for certain the Kaaba is there. Let's say you're at your hotel and somebody else sees the Kaaba and you say, no, this way is the Qibla, right? They tell you where the Qibla is. That is sufficient. Another form of being informed by knowledge is like a compass. A compass is a form of, or a way for you to know the Qibla. Okay, that is a form of knowledge that you are being informed about of where the Qibla is. And how can you use a compass to know the Qibla? A really easy way is by if you have one of these apps Sometimes I'll have a compass in them. Personally, I'm not a big fan of it, just in my own personal practice, because sometimes I'll have a physical compass and the compass in the app, and there's discrepancy there. However, what the app does have that's nice, it'll tell you the exact degree from north that you need to be facing to face the Qibla. So it'll say like 50 degrees from north. So if you have a compass with like one of those dials, you can set it to 50 degrees, point your compass, boom, there's the Qibla. Okay, like if brothers or folks are going camping or something like that, or in the park, it's a very easy way to know. Otherwise, you can use your app. Your app would also fulfill that same role as a compass, right? If you didn't have a physical compass, you could use the app as well. Another way that you can know the Qibla and like you can rely on it is a mihrab, like a prayer place like this, that is frequented by people and no people of knowledge criticize it. Okay, that is frequented by people and no people of knowledge criticize it. So a mihrab like this would fall into that, under that category, right? Mihrab in masajid in general, a person should just kind of be aware of like, have ulama looked at this mihrab, have they determined that it's a good qibla? There was a masjid that was praying the wrong way for years. They were praying so like, let's say the masjid, the masjid was built in order to face the qibla. Like, it was pre-built, but now when you go there, it's at like an angle like this, like the qibla is towards the corner, right? The reason why is because they were facing the wrong way for so long, and then one of the ulama came and said, like, you guys are not facing the qibla, right? He came and checked it, they're not, and then when they did more research, they realized they weren't facing the qibla. It was built wrong, right? So the whole masjid carpet is now on an angle because they built it incorrectly. So a person should be cautious. Now, let's say you're in the woods and you don't have a compass. Your phone's GPS is out of whack. It's not working. The next thing that you can do is you can do like legal reasoning, which is called ijtihad. Right? You can do illegal reasoning based on things like the sun, the moon, the stars, if you're able to do so. Like, if you're able to look at stars in no direction, you could use that. If you're able to look at the sun and note, like, okay, I know for sure the sun sets to the west, and I know the qibla is northeast at 50 degrees from north, for example. Right? That's roughly about this direction. Okay, you can do that. If you can't do that, then you have to follow somebody else who can do that. If there's somebody, like, you're in a group of people and like you're just directionally challenged, but somebody else with you is not, you have to rely on them. Okay, you have to rely on them. So this is facing the qibla. Any questions about those first two, about entering of the time and facing the qibla? Okay. Number 3 is covering one's legal nakedness, which is called the awra. How do they translate it? They just say awra here. I've heard people translate awra as legal nakedness. I think that's a good translation. Awra is what a person is obligated to cover, and that will change based off of one's gender and based off of who's present, like where you are. Okay, so we're going to mention the awra in prayer and the awra in other circumstances. Okay, for men, their awra, their legal nakedness in prayer and around other people is from the navel to the knee. Okay, from the navel to the knee, and the navel and the knee are not part of it. From the navel to the knee, but the knee and the navel are not part of it. However, one must cover some of the navel and some of the knee in order to be sure that they've covered their awra. For the same reason that we mentioned when we were talking about wudu, if you all remember. We talked about washing the face of the arms, and we said the arm is up to here, the elbow. But you have to wash a little bit above the arm to be sure that you got the whole arm. Same thing with the awra. It's from the navel to the knee, but you have to cover some of the knee and some of the navel in order to be sure that you've covered the whole awra. Does that make sense to everybody? Though that is what the minimum is, it behooves a man to cover themselves more, and it is disliked for a man to pray and like their arms are showing or their chest is showing or something like that. Right? It behooves a man to cover themselves up more. For women, their awra during prayer and around unfamiliar men, meaning men that are not their relatives, right? Men that are marriageable and not relatives to them. their awra, their legal nakedness is their entire body except for the face and the hands. Their entire body except for the face and the hands. So that includes feet. That includes feet according to the Shafi'i school. Okay, the Hanafis don't require feet, but the Shafi'i school requires feet. So it is in the entire body except for the face and the hands. As for looking at the face, that is what is prohibited for the man to do, right? And there's difference of opinion in the Masala. However, the relied upon position of the Shafi'i school is that it is impermissible for a man to look at the face of a woman, right? That the entire woman is awra as it relates to the man looking at her. Okay, as it relates to her covering, her whole body is awra except for the face and the hands. And if she fears fitna, then she covers those two. If she fears fitna, which is like temptation or desire from herself or from others towards her, she would cover the face and the hands in that case. As it relates to prayer in specific, it would be the entire body other than face and hands. Now, what do we mean by covering? When we're talking about covering, is it any old covering? Like, can somebody be in a dark room or kind of like somebody be in a tent and it's pitch black? Does that count? No. It has to be something that has mass to it, like a physical cover. And it has to be something that does not show the color of your skin min majlis at-takhatub, from a distance of 1.5 meters, like the distance that you would sit and talk to somebody at, which is, they calculate it as 3 arm spans, which is 1.5 meters. Okay, you have to not be able to discern that person's skin color at that distance for it to be considered a valid cover. So if it's something that is a little transparent, that somebody could see your skin color, that would not suffice. Right? It has to cover it properly. Yes. Any questions about that?
What was the distance you said?
1.5 meters, 3 arm spans. 3 arm spans. Now, if somebody is in their prayer and a part of their body shows, their prayer is invalidated. Right? Their prayer is invalidated unless it shows because like a strong wind blew, or like a child like pulled your clothes, or like an animal like a cat or something like that. Then that would be excused as long as you cover back up as soon as you realize. However, if it's like you're just, let's say a guy is just wearing like a shirt that's too short, right? And then he goes and bends over and his lower back shows, right? That is not something that is like a natural thing that is out of your control. You chose to wear clothes that were not fitting for prayer. So your prayer would become invalidated, right? Your prayer would be invalidated. So we remind the brothers especially to cover one's awra, right? It was from Jahiliyyah, it's from the days of ignorance before Islam that they would do Hajj naked, right? And that was considered jahl, that was ignorance, that was foolishness, right? From the age of Jahiliyyah, right? We don't want to be ignorant people. We want to be people who are well put together and covered. Yes. And another thing that that sisters should be mindful of is, especially in prayer, covering the lower, like the lower part of their head or their chin, right under here, because what is awra or what is not awra is the face, and the face is, like we said in wudu, from the hairline to the chin and ear to ear. This part down here is not included in the face, right? So what a sister could do is, and I'm sharing this because my wife always emphasizes to me, Ammar, when you get to these points, make sure you make these points, right? So what a sister can do is like use her hijab to cover up to and including some of the chin during prayer time. Any questions about that? About covering one's awra? Okay. Number 4 is that a person should, how does he word it here? Remove impurity from their clothes, body, and place of prayer. Right? The author, he says, وَيَجِبُ رَفْعُ النَّجَاسَةِ مِنَ الثَّوْبِ وَالْبَدْنِ وَالْمَكَانِ. So not having any sort of impurity on one's body, on their clothes, or in the place of prayer. So what is such forms of impurity? Like urine, like feces, like blood, like vomit. Okay, all of these things are impure. A person cannot have any impurity on their body, on their clothes, and on their place or on their places of prayer. What is considered part of your clothes? Anything that you're carrying. Anything that you're carrying. Okay, so like a simple example, let's say you kill an ant, right? You take an ant with a napkin, you squash it, you kill it, and you put it in your pocket. Okay, that would be something that would be, you would be carrying najasa. You would be carrying something impure because it's a dead animal, right? It's a dead creature, which is impure. Okay, let's say a mom, for example, their kid comes up to them and their kid has a full diaper and they carry them in the prayer, right? Your prayer would be invalidated immediately. Why? Because the kid is carrying najasa in their full diaper. However, what is the way out of that? Is if you don't know, like let's say you change the kid and you're sure you clean them properly and you wash them and whatever, so you know that they're pure, and then they come to you, carry them. You don't have to be sitting there and thinking like, oh, like did they have a movement or not? What do they do? If you don't know, then the asl, the baseline is that it's pure, right? And this is just a general rule of thumb. If you don't know if something became impure, then the baseline is that it's pure. Okay, the baseline is that it's pure. Like for example, somebody might go out, let's say to a park, and they're praying on the ground, or like in like even an office building, let's say, and they're praying on the ground. Somebody without knowledge might say, like, oh, we need a prayer mat because people are always walking here and they walk in the bathrooms and the bathroom has impurity in it, has najasa, and then they come here and they walk. So that means this place has najasa. We say no, right? The Sharia does not care about like what you could potentially find under a microscope. The Sharia cares about what you can perceive. Okay, what you can perceive. Right? Does this carpet have any signs of najasa? Does it smell like feces? Is there a physical feces on it or something like that? Does it smell like urine? Whatever it might be. Is there something physical, measurable that indicates that there is impurity there? No, okay, then it's pure. Right? It's pure. Right? That is kind of the rule of thumb. Or somebody says that, oh, like I'm not sure if I got impurity, like something impure on myself or not. Like let's say they're cleaning their kid, for example, and they're not sure if they got splashed or not. Right? It's a place of doubt. They're not sure. Then what is the baseline? Is that you're pure. The baseline is that you're pure until you're sure that you got splashed or hit or whatever it might be with najasa. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Now, how do you remove najasa? Okay, how do you remove najasa? By washing it. Okay, washing is the way you get rid of najasa. So let's say an animal, let's say a cat on the street, they use the bathroom or they urinate on tile. Let's say tile is a good example. Okay, now there's a puddle there. How do you get rid of that? You can do a few things. Number one, you can get rid of it bil mukatha, by constantly pouring water, letting water flow until it disappears, like there's no trace of it anymore. Okay, that's one thing you could do, and then you would do one final wash. Another thing you could do is you could like dab it, like soak it up with napkins, toss all those napkins out, and then do one wash on the place to get rid of the ruling of najasa. However, just cleaning it with, let's say, like wet wipes or just pure napkins by themselves will not get rid of the hukum, the ruling of najasa. There's one side of it, which is getting rid of the actual aynun najasa, the actual physical mass of impurity. And then to get rid of the ruling of najasa on that spot, the Islamic ruling, you have to run water over. Water has to flow. Same definition of washing, like we mentioned in wudu. Water must flow. And yes, water must flow. Water must flow. SubhanAllah, we had another point we wanted to mention, but it slipped away from us. Is that clear to everybody? And it's sunnah to do it 3 times. It's sunnah to do it 3 times. Yeah. Did you have a question? Okay. No. One more point about your place of prayer being pure. That is wherever you're going to put your limbs in sujood. Okay, so like I'm gonna, my forehead, my nose, my hands, my knees, my feet, wherever those are going to land in sujood, that has to be pure. Like whatever I'm going to touch, basically. Now, if you're praying and there's like let's say like you're in the park and there's like, animal droppings or something like that, maybe over you, like you're not going to touch it, but you're over it, or it's to the sides of you, it's makruh, it's disliked, right? It's disliked, but it doesn't invalidate your prayer. And that's good to know, because let's say you're praying and then when you get to sujood time and then you see it, like what are you going to do, right? As long as you're not touching it, your prayer is still valid. Though it's makruh. And then maybe when you stand up, if you have room, you can move off to the side a little bit. You can take one step without invalidating your prayer. Any questions on that? Yes.
So is the bathroom considered like a separate thing? Like I've always heard you can't pray like in a bathroom. So is that just considered because the floor is probably dirty, or is that like a separate thing?
So like they'll give an example of places that are excused from you carrying the hukam of najasa from it, but you couldn't pray there. So they'll give an example. For example, is like a street that is used that gets muddy, and there's a lot of animals that pass over, and there's definitely droppings. Like, with certainty, there's droppings mixed with the mud in the street. You know that for sure. They're saying that, okay, if I walk on that street, does that mean my shoes at the bottom of my feet are najis? They say this is excused because it's extremely difficult to avoid. Okay. However, you couldn't pray there. Similarly with a bathroom. Yeah. You couldn't pray there, but like you shouldn't think like, oh, like I just walked in the bathroom, that means my feet and my shoes have najas on. No. Yes.
What if something dry that's impure touches you during prayer and you remove it right away?
If something dry if something dry or impure, or something dry that is impure touches you during prayer and you remove it right away. So they say, let's say for example, you're praying and I'll give another example of something wet. Let's say you have a shawl on your shoulder and you're praying, and like you're praying, for example, in front of the Kaaba. And as you're praying, like a bird dropping comes and hits you. And the second it drops on you, you immediately toss off your shawl. Your prayer is still valid, right? Similarly, something dry and impure that comes upon you, not you touching it, right? So if what wouldn't fall into that category is like you see something impure in front of you, and as you're going down to sujood, you like push it off to the side. That wouldn't fall into that category. But something that falls on you that you turn away, or like you push off of you, that would not invalidate your prayer. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes.
So with the question he asked and then the example you gave, what would be like the timing on how fast to move it off?
It's not like a like a time like that, but it's like as soon as you notice, you immediately take it off, right? But like if let's say you noticed and you're like, oh man, what should I do? All right, yeah, you're done. You're cooked. Yeah. Does that make sense? Okay. Number 5. Okay, so we said that there are 4 that the author mentions. We're gonna give you guys 2 more that we've actually already covered, so they won't be difficult. But there are 4 that he mentioned. We want you to add 2 more. From the preconditions of prayer is to be pure from major and minor ritual impurity. Okay, so this is number 5. To be pure from major and minor ritual impurity, and this is what we covered previously. Okay, this is what we covered previously, and this is with certainty. So somebody who knows for sure that they had wudu, like we mentioned before, and then they're about to pray, and they're like, wait, did I break my wudu or not? Okay, no, you have wudu. Somebody who knows for sure they didn't have wudu, they come to pray and they're like, wait, did I actually make wudu? Okay, no, you don't have wudu. Go and remake it. Does that make sense? Okay. And number 6 is from the preconditions is to avoid that which invalidates the prayer. To avoid that which invalidates the prayer. And what are those things that invalidate the prayer? We'll talk about it when we get to in the section. But they mention this as a precondition that must persist through the prayer. Why? Because if I'm saying that, okay, what will invalidate the prayer is speaking foreign speech, we'll say, meaning speech that's not part of the prayer. I can't start my prayer while I'm speaking. If I say invalidates the prayer is eating and drinking, right? I can't start my prayer while I'm eating and drinking. Does that make sense? Right? If we're saying that it invalidates the prayer during, that means, of course, I can't start that prayer. I can't be doing that before I start the prayer. Okay, so those are the 6. Those are the 6. And we want everybody to memorize these 6 conditions. We want everyone to memorize these 6 conditions. We should have said this in the beginning. We want everyone to memorize these 6 conditions, preconditions of prayer, and we want everyone to memorize what is the legal nakedness of a man and a woman. Okay, what is legal nakedness of a man and a woman? Oh, one more thing we didn't mention. So we mentioned for the legal nakedness of a woman in her prayer and around like unrelated men is her whole body except for her face and her hands. Okay. The legal nakedness of a woman around other women is between her navel and her knees. Between her navel and her knees, similar to men. Similar to men. Right? The men is between the navel and the knees, but some of the navel must be covered and some of the knees must be covered. Okay. So so a sister who is like going to a sister's party, for example, should keep that in mind. Right? That just because you might not need to cover as much as you do outside, there's still a limit with which of which you have to cover. Okay, there's still a limit, and it is disliked or haram, depending on the situation, for somebody to wear clothes that reveals one's figure, man or woman. Right? It is disliked or haram. If it is a form of fitna, of trial for somebody, be it another man or another woman, or somebody of the opposite gender, then it is haram. It is impermissible. If it is not a fitna, then it is makruh. And actually, we have narrations of like Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu. They say about him, "Man istahat minhu al-malaika." Sayyidina Uthman is the one that the angels were shy from him from the amount of modesty that he had, and he was a man. Right? He was a man, and it was narrated about him that even when he would bathe with an izar, with a lungi, right, with a waistcloth. And he would just wash from underneath it, meaning that he wouldn't fully expose himself. And he was shy to do so. He said, how can I fully expose myself? And I know that the angels are around. I know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is seeing me at all times. How can I just fully expose myself? And they say that the awra of a person when they're by themselves is their private areas. Right? They're saying that even when a person is by themselves, they shouldn't fully expose themselves. They shouldn't fully expose themselves. Why? Because that's adab with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is good. That is manners with God. That you don't fully expose yourself. And it doesn't mean that it's haram to do so. It doesn't mean that a person can't take a shower normally. It's just to show us like the amount of adab that the Sahaba had, and the amount of adab and manners that we should strive towards with our Creator subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is also a form of building modesty even outside of the home. Like if they're covering themselves properly even inside their home, how do we think that they'll be outside of their home with others, right? So we want to make sure we're covered properly. And I'll speak to the men. We want to make sure our men and our brothers are not wearing short shorts, right? I don't know where this trend came from. I don't know where, how it started, but a lot of men just wearing just straight short shorts. It's very strange. Allah protect us. Very, very odd. Yeah, and subhanAllah, it's like low hanging fruit obedience of Allah. Like it's so easy to not do that. But somebody who, subhanAllah, they don't care about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's limits, they don't care about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set as a standard, they're not going to think about that, right? They're not going to think about that. Somebody who loves someone, they're going to think about even the most minuscule and minute of things that might get on that person's nerves, right? Like a good spouse is going to know, okay, oh, I'm not going to do this small thing. Oh, why didn't you do that? I know this bothers my wife a lot, so I'm just going to not do that, right? In a healthy way, right? In a very healthy way with a real healthy love. That's what that's going to manifest as, right? We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us that. Ameen. Any questions from today's lesson? Great. Yes. We said 5 was being pure from major and minor ritual impurity. And 6 is avoiding that which invalidates the prayer. Yeah, we want to make sure everyone has these 6 memorized and has memorized the legal nakedness. Oh, excuse me. Every time I mention legal nakedness, I realize I forgot another thing. Another category for women's modesty or for women's awra, their legal nakedness, is how do women cover themselves around non-Muslim women? How do women cover themselves around non-Muslim women and around like fasiqat, around disobedient women, right? Meaning what? Meaning like women who openly commit major sins. Women who openly commit major sins. They say the awrah of that woman is that which would normally show when they're working around the house. Like what would you normally wear around the house? And they say that is like what would normally show in that time would be like hair, neck, feet, arms, like arms up to here, things like that, like just something normal, right? What would you would normally wear around the house? That would be considered your awrah in front of non-Muslim women and in front of disobedient or disobedient women. Any questions about that? Okay. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to act upon what we know. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward the author, Habib Ahmed bin Zayn al-Habashi, for the knowledge that he imparted on us, and with it to please the heart of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to enter us all and the author, rahimahullah ta'ala, in the highest levels of Jannah with the martyrs and the prophets and the people of trueness, of sidq, and those who are righteous. في خير لطف عافية وإلى حضرة النبي اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم. Oh, sure.
If the imam is turned like more to the right than the imam.
If the imam is turned more to the right than the jama'ah. We'll answer it next week, inshallah. We'll answer it next week. Barakallahu feekum.